So, Dee, I wanted to know now, obviously, I know how you started at VoiceWorks, but can you tell me or recall the story for us? How did you end up teaching singing at VoiceWorks Studio?
Um, well, I actually did my degree in School of Music and I did it in piano, but I was getting lessons, like private lessons throughout the whole 4 years. And I don't think I told you this story, but like
Ooh, go
we're
on.
going deep for the first question.
Yes.
Like I remember when I was like in college, I used to like look up the VoiceWorks website and I used to like look at all the coaches and I'm like, oh my God, I want to be part of that team.
Ah, really?
Yeah, it's so cheesy. I forgot to tell you that, but yeah, so I definitely felt like I was like, oh, that looks like a really cool place to work. And I think then I met you at a gig and I was saying that I want to do some lessons with you and we started kind of working together and I remember you actually started going to like LA a lot at the time and
Mhm.
you were coming back with like loads of research and you were like telling me in the lessons and I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. And it kind of just evolved from there. I think you kind of just gave me some bits and pieces, some tools and some knowledge of what you had learned yourself and that I was kind of like, oh, this is really cool instead of researching it. And then I think you kind of knew from there that I was had a real interest in teaching because I was coming back to you about my own private students and I was like, what will I do with this? And
Yeah.
kind of just evolved from there, didn't it really?
Yeah, you were always like when I started coaching you for the performance diploma
Yeah,
for I noticed that there was like a mad hunger for like detail and like needing to know
yeah,
exactly what the process was and how it
yeah.
was done. And then the other thing that struck me, and I remember talking to Angela Ryan about this, I was just like, you have such you've amazing interpersonal skills, like you've such a great way about you with people that like I just could see so many people benefiting, even besides the fact that you were so interested and obviously qualified in singing and music. There was something about your personality. I was like, oh my God, there's so many teenagers and adults and people
Oh,
who
cool.
would just thrive with a personality like yours. And
Yeah.
like so much of what we do, right, is so like about connecting with the student, isn't it?
Course. Absolutely. Especially because, like, I know we talk about this all the time, but like the fact that we're the only musician who can't see our instrument. So it is a much more vulnerable kind of way of working with someone,
Mhm.
and you kind of need to be on their level and, I suppose like you need a certain kind of type of personality to connect with that person as well.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah.
Definitely. And so, like in your experience so far with teaching, what has been one of the like big, like a theme that's cropped up or a fear that like a lot of singers have that you've worked with?
Um, Definitely, I find when I start working with a student, I always kind of I fear that they come in thinking it's more like an audition kind of a thing, or that there's a sense of judgment or something like that. I always fear that that happens. So I always try to just repeat myself and saying like I'm there to help you. Like I want to be, I just want to see you progress. That like all the coaches are like a support system for the students, and that it's not really it's not black and white saying that was good, that was bad, or you know
Mhm.
what I mean.
Mhm.
Do that, don't do that.
Mhm.
So I suppose that that's one thing I do find that happens a lot is
Mm.
that they
And
just feel like they need to get it right,
yeah.
in the lesson. And I'm like, I'd rather for it nearly to go wrong so we can work on it together and that you're doing the right thing at home,
Yes.
you know?
Totally. And I think the two things that you're bringing up there really match up, that like it's such a vulnerable thing. So they're coming in with something that like, your voice, I know when I was, especially when I was younger, I identified myself as a singer. So criticizing me, my singing was criticizing me as a person. So, and especially when you're younger and you're a bit more emotionally fragile. And
Yeah.
so I think they're coming in with this vulnerability. And then on top of that, we're in especially with teenagers, I find they're in a system in education situation where it's exam results and have you got 100% or have you got 70%?
Yeah,
And so they're looking for the kind of the result feedback and the approval of it.
of
Is it wrong
course.
or right, right?
Yeah, and it's nearly the opposite because, as you said, they're going into school where there's a system in place, but they're coming into us and it's like, you're making the rules. You tell me what you want to do. You tell me your goals, what you want out of this.
Hmm.
And when that role is kind of shifted, it's like, oh, whoa, wait, I'm the one who makes the rules. You know what I mean? Which is really cool. And I think that's the way it has to be. You know, there has to be a lot of back and forth,
Yeah.
in that regard, you know.
Definitely. And then, you can, I think that definitely throws them because they're not used to it. But I think once that system gets set up where
Hmm.
you both together have identified like a really clear goal and vision and you're able to like pave out that path. I always say to my singers, I'm like, it's like cross country with becoming a singer.
Yeah,
It's not very clear how we
yeah.
should proceed. Let's just kind of figure out together what would be a really good route. And then we can work out our little milestones along the way.
Totally. And sometimes it happens when, you do actually have a plan in place and you're kind of going, oh, this is actually okay, but you want to veer off that way and you want to veer this way and you want to, you know what I mean? And it's always good to talk to your coach about that and I was doing that, but I think I actually listen to this type of music and I want to go for that, so it's always good to have the conversations about that stuff as well.
Definitely, yeah. Trying to find that flexibility within it as well.
Hmm.
And say with regards to being in voice works and what we're doing as a school, like what is it particularly now after having taught with us for a few years that you like about the school or the community that we have?
Well, you actually said the answer in the question for me.
Those questions
I
are so long.
actually think excuse the way. I think it actually is for me anyway. Um, it's that like real sense of community within the school. I've had the same students, like a lot of the same students for the last couple of years, and I always get new students throughout the year and at the start of the year. But like this is, I know it sounds really weird, but like I love knowing students who aren't my students as well. Like I love that I know Alison's students and I know Christiana's students, and that's like from doing events. And that mightn't be like, and it might be that they're like in my choir as well, or I just know them from like seen them in the waiting room. And I just think that that is really lovely that, all of us know each other's students as well. It's not very individual, and I suppose as well, like that whole sense of community as well. I was kind of I was kind of like, I suppose I was worrying that when we went online that would be lost a little,
Hmm.
but it didn't really at all. We didn't lose that sense of community at all because we were doing those online events and it kind of nearly got stronger. Like I find with indie choir and stuff that they were coming on every week and it was like, hey, how are you? And I was like, one second there, just must get my iPad. And then they're like, how are you doing? And I was just like, this is really nice. You know what I mean? It's kind of like, not in a cheesy
Yeah.
way, but it's like the whole singing thing actually brought a lot of people together as well, which is nice. That's so cheesy, but it's so
No,
true.
it definitely did. And well, we were all united and divided at the same time by what was going on in the world, which was really
Yeah,
interesting. I thought that was what was the most interesting about this whole lockdown situation. I was like,
yeah,
God, everyone is having such an individual experience. Like some people are having to work from home with kids and so you can't really compare, but then all of us are affected by this one thing. But I
yeah.
think the other kind of nice thing about the lockdown was that we were all invited into each other's homes,
I know.
which was really cute. And then you guys
I
put
know.
together, you've got to talk about Indie Choir. You guys seriously pumped out the content, like
Yeah.
literally didn't hold back. Dance routines, locations were visited to implement dance routines, full on harmonies, solos. Talk
I
to me about
know,
the
I
experience.
know, but they were just honestly, they were so committed with that. It was like anything. I was like, "Will we try this?" And they're so up for it. And they're so like all of them have such energy, and they're just brilliant. They're
Have
so
a
fantastic.
gorgeous gang, and
And and
yeah.
even when I was like, "Oh, let's do this," the video for September, and then I was kind of like thinking of all. Remember, I was actually messaging you thinking about all these plans. It's like, what if they got dressed up? What if they were dancing? You know? And then I was going like, coming on, and I'm like, so like, what would you think if we did some dancing in the video as well? And they're like, yeah, let's do it. What do I need to do? Like, well, and then like I had like some people at home, like their daughters were doing their makeup and all this,
Oh,
and
that's
they,
so cute.
oh, it was just great excitement. Like it was so much fun.
And I actually think the bloopers on your WhatsApp were like nearly even more exciting.
I know. And see stuff like that as well, like, you know, we never had that before we went online,
Mhm.
where it was like, you know, everybody was recording individual videos at home, and
Mhm.
you know, they were coming on and they were chatting to each other going, I'm after doing my 29th take, is anybody on the same page? And they're like, I'm the same, and I'm after taking off my makeup and I'm not doing it again, and that's it, and forget about it now and just upload it and have a cup of tea, and that's it. You know, and they all started kind of like, you know, getting to know each other a lot more from even go through the same things of
Yeah.
recording for the first time as well, you know, which was really cool.
Oh, it's fab. And like, it's so unique, like to have, I mean, we would have
Yeah.
never have thought to have done that if it wasn't for the situation. But of
Uh,
course, and so like Barry has done such an amazing job on those edits as well. They're incredible.
Well, it was great because just for anybody watching, Barry is my boyfriend, and he was doing the editing at home, and it was brilliant because I could just, you know, stand over the laptop like, are you doing that right? And she's going, I want that person to be in the middle and that person to be there. And
Love it.
yeah, so it was great to have, like, you know, having an idea but being able to actually control it as well afterwards, you know, when the plans are put into place.
And really like me.
Yeah. Which is cool. Yeah.
Oh, fab. And so, like, I think lots of singers, sorry about my London moments here.
Sure.
If you can hear sirens.
My washing machine is on actually as well. I hope you can't hear
Oh,
it.
God, the wash machine and sirens are competing then. So, like, singers are looking to have a transformation or, for something to happen, to have a change in their voice. What have you, is there something that's kind of worked for you in lessons, or what do you think is really important to consider when a singer needs to or wants to make a change?
Um, Personally, I think if a singer does want to make a change, I think like consistency is super important,
Hmm.
and being consistent with your practice. Um, a couple of weeks ago when we did the VIP conference, the Vocology and Practice conference, Dave Stroud was saying that you know, to see a difference in your voice, and then you know, and to see a lot of progression, to do 25-minute practice sessions a day. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. So I actually tried that out myself, and I was doing it for a couple of weeks, and it was like I found that it was hugely beneficial. And and then in August, because I wasn't really on a routine, I took a break, and I did my first gig back after COVID, like last Friday. And even I found from like that couple of weeks break that like I just found that the agility in my voice wasn't as great as when I was practicing
Yeah,
those 25 minutes.
yeah,
Um, and I just think that it is super, super important in terms of like having nearly a set time a day that you do it at the same time every day, and kind of making a habit of it. It does really pay off, and I know you need patience for that.
yeah.
But it is so rewarding when you actually do put in the effort of being consistent.
Yeah.
You know?
And I think there's people don't believe that it will, like they'll put in all that effort and they won't, or because the result, like in the same way working out, you don't like do 10 sit-ups and see the results.
Yeah.
So I think it's part of that is believing in the result. And some of it is like to do with having like a prompt or making it really easy to practice. And not everybody has an environment where it's just really easy to practice. Some people
I
live with
know.
lots of other people. And it's like finding, even if it's just going out into your car, whatever it takes. I actually was learning about an opera singer who practices for 5 minutes in every hour.
What?
And she, like, when she was going back to her coach couldn't believe the transformation in her voice.
Yeah.
She was like just those short bursts, and it was something that she was really able to maintain. And she just had like, a very particular formula of exercises in that for 5 minutes that she would just run. And like, I mean, to me, I'm like, oh my God, I couldn't. Like, I suppose I'm not singing at the moment, but if you were like getting ready for an opera, then that would make a lot of sense.
And it would be your main priority. So yeah,
Yeah.
taking 5 minutes out of every hour would
Yeah.
make
And
a big
she said that it was more manageable than having, she said that she would procrastinate over, like, I have to do an hour's practice. I'm not going to do that. Whereas she
I
couldn't
get
really,
that too, though. Like
yeah.
you need short bursts as well, just to
Yeah.
kind of get a super focused practice,
Totally.
and
And
for
anything more you do, if you do more, great, that's a bonus. But like, try and only commit to like the most minimum amount you could do very regularly,
yeah,
right?
totally. And like, especially if you're starting out as well, I find that like setting even like a timer of 20 minutes on your phone.
Hmm.
And sometimes when you start out, it might be like you'll get to like 15 and you're like, I don't have much more, you know? And then sometimes you'll actually find that it'll get to 20 and you're kind of like, I just want to keep going.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? So yeah, being consistent definitely would be, and like I suppose obviously having a goal in place, but I think consistency to see that transformation in your voice, I suppose, is the most important thing.
And lastly, what is your favorite thing about vocal coaching?
Um, for me, I love seeing the student progress, and I think it's like especially fulfilling when it's down to the advice and encouragement and that you've passed on, and like the plans that you've put into place.
Hmm.
I find that like extremely fulfilling, and it's really lovely as well that like I'm looking at my calendar now for September, and a lot of my timetable could be like students returning, and there's a lot of new students as well, but it's like it's really nice that like I have such a huge love of learning myself and a huge love of singing, and that like it's so nice to be working with people who are like-minded, and they have that same hunger, and
Hmm.
they have such a big love of learning themselves. It's so nice to actually come into work and work with people like that.
I know, and like, and vice versa. I'm sure it must be a real joy for a student to work with a
Yeah,
teacher who just can't get enough of voice and learning about the
yeah,
voice and getting better.
yeah.
Like, I know from being in the building that like sometimes people are just absolutely vibrating coming out of the rooms. They're just like so many ideas, so much excitement.
I know, and I feel like sometimes I'm like, I need to tone it back a little bit because
No, I
I'm
don't.
coming in.
Don't back.
Yeah, no. I'm like a student be coming in like, I was thinking of you during the week, and they're like, okay, it's like, I heard this song on the radio that I think you'd be brilliant at singing. You know what I mean? And you're like, I need to tone it back a little bit.
They think that's what the positive energy thing, like a lot of people talk about that there's a great positive vibe in the building. I just think you're all so enthusiastic about the voice and
Yeah,
that you just bounce around inside there with the excitement about it all. And that just feeds into like a very happy frenzy.
yeah, totally, totally. But sure, that brings it back to what we were chatting about, the community, like that nice sense of community. That's how we have that lovely sense of community.
Yeah,
Because there's so much love of learning
there
and love of
really
singing and
is.
bouncing off
And
the walls.
totally. And we have been meeting up every Thursday, and I have been living for it. I actually have been enjoying it so much. We, as teachers, as a group, we've been meeting up and unpacking a lot of what we learned at that conference, the Vocology and Practice Conference. And we just take different topics, and it's been brilliant for me to keep me thinking and taking over with my own knowledge. And I think we've all really gotten an opportunity to get to know each other better through that as well, haven't we?
Absolutely, totally. And I think, especially during lockdown, I suppose I had it in my head like that. I know that this coach is really good at this coach is really good at this coach is really good at this. But now I'm at a point where we know each other so much better that it's like, I'm like, Alison is so in tune with that, like I need to have a conversation with her about that kind of
Hmm.
stuff. And
Yeah,
so in tune with that, and and it's really cool to bounce all those ideas off each other,
yeah,
isn't it?
totally. Well, thank you so much for this chat,
Thanks, Gemma.
Dee. And I'm looking forward to going back in September. And I think you
No,
have
I
a few,
can't wait.
it's going to be fab. You have a few slots left in on Thursdays.
Hmm.
You just opened up the Thursday, so your
Yep.
Monday, Tuesday is nearly booked. So there's free trials coming up next week and or this week, sorry, this week, this Friday, and then we'll
Yep.
open up one or two more maybe the following
Yep.
week. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Cool. Okay,
Thanks so
thanks,
much.
hon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Okay.